Yo, yo, it's time to discover the flow. Shout out to the bros. You know, I like to welcome everybody to discover the flow. No matter how you discover the show or discover the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for discover the flow. Yeah, cowabunga do. You know live is how we come to you. Turn the levels up when you hear the boys coming through. The Pod Squad giving you just what you need, hitting you with a new special guest every week. Don't you dare hit skip, man, it's Tristan and Kip. DTF Pod about to take you on a trip. Mega Ran bring the heat, yeah. But be clear, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Welcome to Discover the Flow. No matter how you discovered the show or discovered the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for Discover the Flow. Let's start the show.
We don't normally do any kind of intro for this podcast, but the more research I did for this one, the more fun I had. And we're not exactly big Tom Clancy book readers, but we grew up on the games and the movies and all that stuff.
Love the video games.
But 10 years as an Apache helicopter pilot in the Air Force, an
Army,
FBI
don't
special.
do that to me.
I'm sorry, Army. Sorry.
Should have read my notes.
An FBI special agent, a member of the Dallas SWAT team, awarded the Bronze Star, the Air Medal for Valor, New York Times bestseller. You may or may not be secretly Tom Clancy. We don't know. But ladies and gentlemen, Don fucking Bentley. Dude, you are so freaking cool. I never even knew of you until recently, and now I'm a huge fan.
Thanks. I'm gonna record this and show it to my wife. See, like,
And if you
people
have
think
kids,
I'm
show it to
cool.
them
People
too.
think I'm cool. Oh no, I
Yes.
got kids. They're beyond. They do not think I'm cool. There's nothing I can do with that.
That's
Well,
normal.
then show it to her and let her know. And I mean, good Lord, there's entire podcasts dedicated to the writing that you do and stuff like that, man. That's fantastic. That's something to brag about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have a pretty good gig.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. We've been lucky, and we have good problems right now. We're backed up with interviews, and we're doing a lot of stuff right now. So we haven't gotten to fully read the book yet, but we have it already, and we're working on it. And I gotta say, I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan all the time.
Oh, thank you. If you like it right now, maybe you should just stop where you are, and that way I won't disappoint you. Just stop and leave on a good note. That's my recommendation to people.
You don't know how many times I've ended conversations like that. I get a big laugh and then I just walk away without saying crap. It's the Costanza move, I think.
Exactly.
So the book that we're really talking about, and the one that's about to be released, is Denied Access.
Yeah,
and that's part of the Mitch Rapp series.
Not just part of the Mitch Rapp series. It is the third book in the Mitch Rapp origin story. So Vince Flynn wrote the first two, and then he never wrote the third one. And so everybody's kind of wondered what happened and how Rapp became Rapp and what happened to his girlfriend. And so I get to tell that story.
And the first two were American Assassin and Killshot, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
When was the last one released? When was Killshot released? Because I think I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think I remember it being over a decade ago.
Yeah, that sounds right. So Mitch Rapp, the first time Vince Flynn wrote Mitch Rapp, it was actually called Transfer of Power. And he wrote, man, I can't remember, a whole slew of them. And he aged Mitch in real time. And then he just stopped and decided to write the origin story. And so he wrote American Assassin and Killshot. And then I think Killshot may have come out at the same time, maybe in the same year as The Last Man, or just before. The Last Man was his final book. And so after Killshot, he went back forward in time, wrote The Last Man, and then he tragically passed away. And so then Kyle Mills picked up with The Survivor and wrote 9 more books after that. And so I'm going all the way back to the beginning, even though it wasn't the first 2 books that Vince actually wrote.
And you've been a writer for quite a while now. I heard an interview where you said you had was like 3 or 4 what you considered no sellers or failed books before you really hit it.
Yeah, you're being kind. So it wasn't just that I considered them no sellers, it's that everybody I tried to sell them to considered them no sellers. So there was nobody who wanted to buy those books. And it took me 17 years to write those 3 because there's an appropriate amount of sulking that needs to happen after every book doesn't sell. And so my debut novel is called Without Sanction, that came out in 2020. And then, yeah, in 5 years, let's see, Denied Access will be my 10th book. So it's a little misleading because when you write your first book, the publisher tends to buy it about 18 months or so before it comes out because they already have the next year packed. And so I think I probably sold it maybe in 2018 and then wrote another one. And then, so by the time my first book came out, Without Sanction, came out in 2020, I'd already written the sequel to it, and it started on my first Tom Clancy book. But yeah, for a while there, I was writing a book every 5 months, which I do not recommend, but it allowed me to be able to write full time. And then the Tom Clancy books and my books are what got me the ability to write the Vince Flynn books, which is awesome. He's my all-time favorite writer. Unfortunately, I never got to meet him before he passed away, but I've been fortunate enough to get to know his widow and her new husband. And I got to have coffee with his dad last time I was in town, and one of his brothers, and have his dad tell me what he thought about my book and stuff. It's when you have an 80-year-old guy there's no filter. Like, he will tell you exactly what he thinks. And his dad
That's one of
was
my
an
favorite
English
thing about
teacher,
old
too.
people.
That's right. That's right. The time for filtering their thoughts is over with. They don't care anymore. They're going to tell you.
They've been nice to everybody for way too long.
Exactly.
I think something just snaps.
But yeah, his family go ahead.
So how do you go about getting into the Tom Clancy series? How does a relatively new author?
Yeah. So it's kind of
that's a pretty deep series to get involved in.
For sure. And it's kind of like everything in this business. It's part working really hard and being there, and part luck. And so and that even applies to Tom Clancy. You know, his first book, Hunt for the Red October, was actually published by a small press, by the Naval Institute Press, and it was selling okay, but he wasn't Tom Clancy yet. And Ronald Reagan happened to have his book in his hand and was walking through a press scrum, and some reporter called out, "Mr. President, what are you reading?" And he said, "This is a great book. It's Hunt for the Red October." And so that completely changed the trajectory of Tom Clancy's career. And so he was a good writer before. He'd done the work. He happened to be in the right place at the right time when lightning struck. And that was sort of the story for me too, in that my editor for my Matt Drake series, the first book was called Without Sanction, is an editor by the name of Tom Colgan. And he has edited everybody from Lee Child to Janet Ivanovich to pretty much every awesome book you've read, including Tom Clancy. And so after I turned in my second book, because there's an old saying in the publishing industry that lots of people can write one book, but very few people can write 2 books. And the reason for that is because your second book, you have your whole life to write your first book, to think about ideas, to get it right. Your second book is usually done under contract. It means you got to do it in less than a year. You got to do it while you're doing your day job. You got to do it while you're getting some amazing comments from people on Amazon about how much they detest your book at the same time. And so after I turned in the second book in my Matt Drake series that was called The Outside Man, we had what was called the editorial call. So it's kind of like when you're standing in front of your 4th grade teacher and you forgot your homework that day. And so it's the first time you get to hear what your editor thinks of the book and what he or she thinks needs to change. And so my editor, Tom Colgan, had gone through the whole thing. And then in this very Columbo-esque moment at the end, he's like, "Just one more thing. What would you think about writing the Tom Clancy books?" And it was kind of like, I heard this, I'm like, what did he just say? And so it just so happened to work out that the guy who wrote those before me, a fantastic writer named Mike Madden, he actually writes for the Clive Cussler folks now. he decided that he was done writing them. And so Tom, the editor, was looking for a new person to write in the Tom Clancy universe. And so he liked my first book, but wanted to make sure I could actually write more than one. And after I turned in my second one and he liked it, he offered me the gig.
I mean, and your background is perfect for that with everything you've been through in your life.
Yeah, it's funny when Without Sanction came out, I was doing a radio interview, and the interviewer, she was trying to pin me to the wall, and she said, "Are you Matt Drake? Are you your protagonist?" And I said, I'm absolutely not him, but I've stood in the same room with men who could be, and that's absolutely true. I have a very interesting background, but the real fun part are the people that I have gotten to know who could be characters in my book. And oftentimes I put them as characters in my book because it's kind of a neat way for me to pay tribute to them. But I got to have a little bit of fun at their expense. And so what I typically do is put them in my book, but I change their affiliation. So for instance, Brandon Cates is one of my best friend. He was an Army Ranger combat veteran, was in the initial invasion of Afghanistan. He's incredibly proud to be an Army Ranger. And so in my Tom Clancy book, I made him a Navy SEAL, which I thought was hysterical. He didn't think it was quite so hysterical. But what are you going to do, Brandon? What are you going to do?
Listen, Brandon, I got him back for you, man. I told everybody he was in the Air Force. So now you guys are even.
That's fair. That's fair.
Still sorry about that one. No, but odd question, but it was just something I was thinking about. Being in that universe and writing for that universe, like, what do you think when you see like the Tom Clancy movies, like and the Jack Ryan TV show and stuff like that? Like, can you enjoy it or do you pick it apart?
Yeah, I'm not so my wife would answer differently than this. She would say, "You're always saying what's right or what's not right." But at the heart, like, I'm a storyteller who loves stories. And so I'm a kid of the 80s when they had a lot of cinematic masterpieces on TV with titles like The A-Team and Airwolf and Blue Thunder and Magnum PI. And so I still love great stories. And so, the first season of Jack Ryan in general on the Amazon channel, I thought was great. I thought the first season was absolutely fantastic. I still think Hunt for the Red October is one of the best movies ever made, though I may be, even though Tom Clancy didn't do it, I may be more of a Top Gun guy. I mean, my kids all know that the answer to something isn't no, it's negative, Ghost Rider. The pattern is full. And so I'll still,
I do that all the time.
I don't get super wrapped around the axle for that kind of stuff like that. As long as they're in the same ballpark, I just love the story. But fortunately, I have friends who, like Brandon, there's another guy named Jason Beefley who was in a special mission unit in the Army for the majority of his career. And he has been kind enough for me to send drafts to or ask questions about or trying. And he, in Without Sanction, there's this scene where Matt Drake does this hey-ho, this high altitude, high opening insertion into Syria. And so I sent Jason the scene and asked him a bunch of questions and made sure I got the details right. And at the end of our call, after he'd read it and kind of blessed it, he said, we would never just send one person. You know that, right? And I'm like, yeah, but was it a good story? And he said, it was a great story. And I'm like, well, that's all I care about. I mean, you never let the truth stand in the way of a good story. And so that's kind of how I roll.
That's damn near one of my mottos in life. No, I mean, if that wasn't true, then we would never be able to enjoy stuff like James Bond or Jason Bourne.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you got to ignore the fact that it's just one man doing the job of 10.
Now, I will say though, like with this genre, you want to get as much right as you can. Like what you can't ever mess up is gun stuff, is, people want to know that the unit you're talking about is really a unit, that the way that they're employing stuff is right. And so it's a very unique readership in that they will be fine with one person parachuting into Syria to go pick up an asset when nobody would ever do that. But if you talk about a safety on a Glock, like your life is over. Just forget about it. You're never going to write again. And it is, right? And it's Tom Clancy was kind of that same way. He invented the techno thriller, right? And so he was known for getting his details right. And the rest of us that kind of follow in his footsteps have to do that as well.
Yeah,
I'm
readers
sure you
and
have a large
hardcore
majority
fans.
that isn't, but I got to imagine a good percentage of the people who read your books and stuff like that are veterans or people currently in the military. So yeah, of course, you're going to want to get every detail right so that you stay out of that Amazon hate zone like you were talking about.
So it's kind of funny that actually the most reader email I ever got for something I got quote unquote wrong is my final Tom Clancy book is called Weapons Grade. And I live north of Austin. My son went to A&M, Texas A&M. He was an Aggie. And so part of the book was taking place in Austin. And so I wanted Jack Ryan Jr. I'm like, I'll have him go to an Aggie football game. And because of the way the timeline worked and the different days, I was like, I just need it to be Sunday. He's going to go to a football game on Sunday. And the amount of hate mail I got that's like, college football doesn't play on Sunday. How could you get that wrong? And I'm like, you're right. All the stuff about the SR-71, all the stuff about the guns, the satellites and that, I got that right, but that doesn't matter because I made Texas A&M play on a Sunday.
Readers and rabid fans are the worst trolls you could ever deal with. And I'm an avid reader myself. Well, I used to be an avid reader. I listen to books more now than I read. But
yeah,
the little details, and you're absolutely right. A safety on a Glock, or the wrong call letters for something. There can only be one guy out there that knows what the proper call sign is, and if you get it wrong, he's the one that's going to make the big deal about it. Inevitably,
he'll find you.
Inevitably.
Yeah, 100%. One of my friends is Mark Graney, who's a fantastic writer. He does the Gray Man series. There was a movie on his first novel, The Gray Man, that came out a year or two ago. And so he wrote a book in which he mistakenly gave the A-10, that the Warthog, that awesome tank killer. He talked about its afterburners, and the A-10 does not have afterburners. And everybody in the known universe has written to Mark Graney and let him know. So if you're out there and you haven't, send him a note. He loves to hear about how the A-10 does not have afterburners.
That's mark.graney@gmail.com. Let him know. I'm
going to have to do that and say, Don Bentley sent me to do it.
Do not do that.
He told me that you screwed up and I have to let you know.
Afterburners. What is this, Star Wars? No.
Next thing you're going to tell me is the gun goes pew pew.
I got to ask out of curiosity, with the success that you have now in writing, have your original 4 books seen any like revival? Because I got to imagine people would seek out more of your work.
Yeah, so it's been interesting. I kind of thought that would happen when I got the Tom Clancy gig, and it didn't. And so Mark Graney also wrote for Tom Clancy, but he wrote those books when Tom was still alive, and then was the first guy to write in the universe after Tom passed away. And he's kind of a big, he and Brad Taylor, who's another fantastic writer and was a Delta Force troop and squadron commander, are kind of like the big brothers to me. And so Mark said that when he took over the Clancy series, his Gray Man books kind of took off. I didn't really see much of a bump when I took over Clancy. And I think it's been because there have been so many writers in that Clancy universe that the readers didn't really realize it was me or really care too much. And that's kind of that's a testament to the editor, Tom Colgan, for picking the right writers so that to the readers, it was kind of immaterial who the writer was, right? It was just more great Tom Clancy stories. So the opposite of that was true for the Vince Flynn books, because only Vince Flynn and then Kyle Mills, that stepped in after Vince tragically passed away and wrote 9 books. It was only ever the 2 of them. And so when they announced that I was taking over the Vince Flynn gig from Kyle, my publicist actually texted me when they announced it, and he said, "You're trending on Twitter right now." And I'm like, well, I just need to stop. Like, this is the pinnacle of my entire life. But what was trending on Twitter was a sentiment that went something like, I don't know who this Bentley guy is, but this is my favorite series in the world, and he better not screw this up. And so, to their credit, I have seen a bump in my Matt Drake series since I took over the Vince Flynn thing, and we're actually working with a producer now to do a potential TV show on the books. And so it was fun. I actually turned in my pilot that I wrote for the first show based on my Without Sanction book. And so Hollywood is where writers go to die, because it's all glitzy and you hope your book comes out and turns into a movie. And so it's really, really easy to get distracted by all of that. The majority of the time, nothing happens, even if you write a pilot or something like mine. Obviously, I'm hoping mine is different, but it's been cool to go back to that universe and revisit it and then adapt it for a TV pilot.
Have you ever thought about something like maybe a graphic novel or something?
No, I'll be honest, that graphic novels are not my thing. And so I would have no idea. I've never read any. You're not supposed to call them comic books, but I had my best friend.
You can call them comic books with us.
Screw that. My best friend in high school and the guy I lived with in college for 3 years was a huge comic book collector. And so he was a big X-Men guy and had one of the earlier Conan the Barbarian comic books and stuff like that. But I tried a couple of times and I just couldn't get into it. So if it happened, it wouldn't be me writing it. That's for sure.
That's not for everybody, but it's another genre.
For sure.
Another outlet of people that you could, reach out to if you ever
And
decided.
they're huge now. They're really one of my, I also love fantasy, in particular urban fantasy. And so one of my favorite writers is a guy named Jim Butcher, who writes the Harry Dresden Files. And I believe his books have been adapted into graphic novels. And so it's more common for sci-fi books or fantasy books, for sure.
So you're taking over for the second writer in what has been now a 3-writer series.
Mm-hmm.
You've obviously written in the Tom Clancy universe, things like that. How do you honor the legacy of Vince Flynn and Kyle Mills?
Yeah.
While respecting and using your own ideas and putting your own twist on things. How is that a hard thing to do? Is it,
that's a really great question. And so when my editor for the Clancy books and my books, Tom Colgan, when he offered me the Clancy gig, he said, listen, I don't want you to try and write like Tom Clancy. He said, nobody can write like Tom Clancy. He said, what I want you to do is write your style in his universe. Just write fan fiction in his universe. And so that took a lot of weight off of me from the standpoint of I didn't feel like I had to try and be Tom or emulate the way he wrote. I just had to tell stories in that universe he loved. When I was a kid growing up, I loved Star Trek. And there were a whole bunch of novels in the Star Trek universe, right? Where there were people who had just taken those characters and adapted that. Star Wars is the same way. And so that's how I really saw myself when I was writing the Clancy things. Vince Flynn was a little bit different in that Kyle's first book was called The Survivor, and he calls it a forgery from the standpoint that Kyle went to great lengths to try in that first book to mimic Vince's actual style, to mimic his phrasings, to try and write like he wrote, because he thought it would be an easier transition for the fans to go from Vince to something quasi-Vince to Kyle. So I kind of went from the opposite standpoint of that I can't, if I'm trying to write like Vince or like Kyle, I'm concentrating too much on the writing and not enough on the story. And so what I did for the first book I wrote in the Vince Flynn universe came out last September, and it was called Capture or Kill. And I knew I wanted to go back in time and write when in the period where Vince was still writing before Kyle took over, because I had this great idea. I was in the FBI when I remember watching TV one night when President Obama walked out to that podium and said, "We just got bin Laden." And my first thought was, it's about freaking time we got him. And my second thought, because I was a huge Vince Flynn, Mitch Rapp fan was, I wonder what Mitch Rapp had to do with that. And so my first Vince Flynn book, Capture or Kill, actually tells that story. So it takes place in 2011. And so what I did was just immersed myself in Vince's books, the ones he wrote before and after that book. I just read them over, his books over and over and over and over again, because I knew I couldn't write like him, but I wanted to hopefully, if I immersed myself in his world and his writing, that maybe subconsciously I would make plot choices that were what Vince would do, or that I had in my head the Mitch Rapp that he wrote, or the way that he described those characters. And so that's what I did again with Denied Access, because again, that takes place. It's the third book of the 3-book trilogy that tells Mitch's origin story. And so I read the first 2 books, American Assassin and Kill Shot, just over and over and over and over again, because that Mitch is a younger Mitch. He's only 20 something years old. It's right after he joins the CIA. He's much more raw. And so I wanted to capture that character the way Vince wrote him, even though I knew I couldn't write in the same manner in which Vince wrote.
Okay.
I dipped away for a second. I don't want you to think I was being rude. I wanted to grab this, which is blurred out for odd reasons. Yeah, sorry about that. There's nothing adult about it. It's just, it's denied access. It's not on sale. It's blurred because you can't buy it yet. So September 30th, 2025, that's when it comes out. So that's a day before this is going to air. But let everybody know, and we're not done yet. I just wanted to let everybody know right now where they are able to find that, besides obviously like Amazon.
Yeah, you can find it anywhere books are sold. If you go to my website, which is donbentley.books.com, BENTLEY, you can click on it and it has order links through all of it. But pretty much anywhere you find books, you can get that. Now, if you want signed ones, if you go to my website again, there are a list of independent bookstores that I'm going to on book tour that I'll sign. The Poison Pen is a great one. They'll ship it to you. But yeah, anywhere books are sold.
Yeah, and again, like I was saying earlier, I listened to some other podcasts where they were talking about this series of books and you and your writing and stuff. It really is, like I said, a very dedicated and extremely excited fan base with blogs and Reddit pages and other podcasts themselves. Was there somebody had mentioned something briefly about you guys were dropping clues and stuff for the release date? And then when they went to the website, it just said denied access. They didn't know that was the title. They thought that they got punked on something.
The guy who does the marketing for, or does a lot of marketing for the Vince Flynn thing. I always mess up his last name. His first name is James. His last name is ABT. And I think you say it Abbott, but I might be messing that up. He comes up with a lot of really entertaining ideas leading up to the book's release. He also runs the Best Thriller Books website. And so he had this idea that we would give out some clues that would turn into a web address. And we told the readers, hey, if you solve this, you can go there and get the title. But then he thought it would be even eviler if it's because the title is denied access, to make it look like a website not found HTML page, which was, I'm sure, hilarious for him, but he was not on the receiving end of all the angry emails and social media posts. It's like, I figured this stupid thing out and it wouldn't let me in.
Exactly, because they're all going to blame you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's just as funny as turning an Army Ranger into a Navy SEAL.
So that's hurtful. Those are two completely different things. I can't believe you would make that comparison.
But this is like I said, we've started it, but we haven't had a chance because we've been thankfully very busy recently. But
you guys are dead to me. You're dead to me.
The little that I've been able to so far has been fantastic. And we had 3 different books sent our way recently, so the fact that we're on this one is a good thing.
Well, that's good. If there's some of the other ones, like people are like, oh, should I read you first or Brad Thor? I'm like, I don't want to bat cleanup for Brad Thor. Like, read me first.
Manage
Oh,
expectations, people.
Exactly.
Manage expectations.
So
Go ahead. Oh, what I was kind of would like to do, and if you're okay with this, are you willing to talk about your time in the service and things like that as well?
Yeah, for sure.
First of all, Apache helicopter pilot.
Yeah, it's a great gig. It is hard.
That's probably one of the coolest jobs that I've heard about.
Yeah, it's hard to believe you get paid to do that job. And so you have it is a gunship. It has this amazing 30 millimeter cannon that hangs under the nose, and you can slave that cannon to your eye. So wherever you look, that cannon looks. And if you see something you don't like, you just look at it, the cannon, and you pull the trigger and it goes away. Like, it's amazing. It's just vanishes. And when that cannon fires, like, the whole helicopter shakes. It sounds like there's a jackhammer underneath of you. It is a really, really fun airplane to fly. And so I did 10 years in the Army as a Apache helicopter pilot. Most of it was in the cavalry. And so the Army is different. Army aviation is different from Air Force or Marine aviation, in that in Marine aviation, for instance, they all exist, like their Cobras exist to do nothing but support the guys on the ground. In Army aviation, aviation is a separate branch. And the reason why that matters is you can think of Apaches as big flying tanks. And so for instance, my first tour of duty was in South Korea, and our job as cavalry units was to cross what was called the forward line of troops and go deep into North Korea and hunt the second echelon forces that would be coming down to reinforce the actual front lines and kill them before they could get down. And so you would do the same sort of thing that a ground cavalry person would do. So you would set up and do, have phase lines and do a movement to contact or an area or zone reconnaissance or a route reconnaissance. And so it's different than just providing fires for guys on the ground. You work as a separate branch, like as flying tanks. Now, that changed pretty substantially after September 11th. So I deployed to Afghanistan from 2005 to 2006 as an air cavalry troop commander. And for that tour and most of them after that, we had changed very much to just doing more support on the ground. We did do some reconnaissance. Every now and then you do a route reconnaissance to see, what the road looked like and whether you could move on it or something. But the majority, there are actually 3 mission sets in Afghanistan. And so they had what was called the ring route security. So a lot of what moved in Afghanistan and Iraq moved by air, because in Afghanistan, because the terrain was very difficult to navigate, and there was always the danger of IEDs, improvised explosive devices, or EFPs, the explosively formed penetrators that the Iranians smuggled first into Iraq. And the Iranians have an incredible amount of American blood on their hands from that weapon. It just decimated the up-armored Humvees and stuff like that. And then they smuggled some of those in turn into Afghanistan. And so because of the danger of that, they would move men, material, ammunition, and stuff a lot of times by air, by Chinook or Black Hawk transport helicopters. And so as Apaches, you would fly escorts for those missions. So they tended to be usually between 6 and 8 hours, and they call them ring routes, because there are all these air routes that link these FOBs, forward operating bases, together. And so you would literally fly from one to one, escorting the Black Hawk or Chinook as they made deliveries. And so the second one is called the deliberate operations, or the direct action operations. And so those were more, when we were in Afghanistan, typically special operations folks are supported by the Army 160th. So the Night Stalkers, the folks who were made famous, tragically so, by Black Hawk Down, the movie, or Mogadishu. And so they have the little birds that look kind of like those Magnum PI helicopters. The guys on the ground a lot of time call them killer eggs, because they look like eggs, but they have Gatling guns and rocket pods on them. or they have what are called DAPs, which are Black Hawk helicopters that they've added rocket pods and cannons and Gatling guns. But in Afghanistan, the terrain is so high that their little birds really didn't have the ability to get up to the high mountain passes and such. And the DAPs, for the most part, were in Iraq supporting people there. And so we, as Apache pilots, did a lot of support for special operations, direct action missions. So a SEAL team or a Green Beret team is going to go hit a compound, and we would escort them to the compound and then provide fires for them once they got on the ground. You know, they would talk directly to us and vector us in. And so, in fact, I spent most of my time in Bagram. And so every time a new special operations unit would rotate into Bagram, we would take them across the river. There was kind of this makeshift range, and we would practice shooting for them so they could get used to talking to us and calling us in. It's kind of a funny story. I was shooting for this Green Beret A team, and I just did a rocket run, and then coming around my front seaters, he's putting cannon on top of where I'd shot the rockets. And the voice on the radio, the Green Beret I was talking to, kind of sounded familiar, but I was like, this is a new team that just rotated in. There's no way I would know this guy. So after I got done doing my rocket run, I hear that voice saying, "Don, is that you?" And the guy on the radio, the Green Beret team leader, was a guy I'd actually gone to college with, and we were in ROTC together. And now I'm shooting rockets over his head, which was kind of entertaining, but if you know the Army, not at all surprising. And so that's kind of the second mission set. And then the third mission set is what's called QRF, or Quick Reactionary Force. And so you're the 911 for, at the time, like I said, I spent a lot of time at Bagram, but they had the same thing in Salerno or Jaybad, Jalalabad, where a pair of Apaches, you'd have I think it was a 12-hour shift. I can't remember anymore. And it was usually from like 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. was the day shift, and then the night shift was the opposite of that. And so you would get up, if you had the morning shift, you get up at 3 a.m, shower, do whatever. You'd go down and pre-flight the aircraft, run it up, make sure it was good to go. And then you would come into the TOC, or the Tactical Operations Center, and they would brief you on any missions that were scheduled that day. And then you would be given a radio, a little walkie-talkie, and you'd go about your day doing your job. And if that walkie-talkie went off, you had to be airborne within 30 minutes. And so it could be, most of the time it was things like, there's a general that wants to fly to Kabul, and so you got to escort his Black Hawk. But it could also be, there'd be a medevac call where there's, a guy or a girl had gotten hurt, and the medevac was going out to get them, and you would escort the medevac, and potentially, if the landing zone was still hot, you would provide supporting fires to the unit in contact. Or they would sometimes have what's called a TIC, troops in contact, where maybe a convoy had been ambushed or something bad had happened. And so you were, like I said, kind of the cavalry coming over the hill in order to save people. And so those were the 3 missions that you kind of rotated through in Afghanistan.
Let's say that that walkie goes off. You said you got 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. What are you doing during that time?
Yeah, so when it went off, I flew with a guy. I actually put him in my Tom Clancy books too. His name was Alex Brown. He was a stud. And so this was back in like 2005, where lacrosse was not a nationally known sport as much as it is now. It was mainly like an East Coast thing or whatever. And so he had gone to lacrosse to college on a lacrosse scholarship. Now, he went to like UNC or Duke or something like that. I can't remember. Or maybe it was Hopkins. So this really good school, really good lacrosse team. And I had no idea what lacrosse was, and was thoroughly unimpressed. And so he would be like, and I was like, what is this game? Like you have a stick and a ball, like play a man's sport, be a football player. And so he didn't love that.
It does look like an athletic cup on the end of a stick. That's all it looks like.
And so he even, when we got back from Afghanistan, he went to Army Special Forces selection and became a Green Beret, and was a Green Beret team leader. So he left flying Apaches to go be a Green Beret and finished out his tour. And so he was a stud. We flew together quite a bit. And so when that radio would go off, because I was the pilot in command, I would run for the helicopter jump in the back seat, get what's called the APU, the auxiliary power unit going, and start powering up the helicopter, running checks on the weapons, getting the GPS system initialized, loading whatever I knew. And he would run to the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center, and get a brief on what the mission was. And so sometimes, most of the time it was more generic things. Hey, you're going to escort this helicopter or whatever. Sometimes it could be, hey, there's a unit in contact. Here's their call sign. Here's their frequency. Here's where they're located. And so he would come back with that information on his knee board, and then we would take off with whoever. Usually there were always at least 2 Apaches, and you would go as a pair. So you and your wingman would take off and do that. And so it was always sporty, because sometimes you had no idea what you were getting into. You just knew that Americans needed help, and you were going to hopefully be that help.
That's kind of awesome to get a little bit of insight on stuff like that, because like the average person doesn't even know what goes on in the military on a regular basis. You know what I mean? There's so many moving parts that we get to see certain bits and pieces in movies and TV and video games, and we think we know what's going on, but we don't even know a third of what you guys really do. Another thing that I noticed, there's 2 words that are attached to your name quite often, and that's valor and heroism. And the Bronze Star, do you mind telling us how you were, or what you did to be awarded such?
Yes. So the Bronze Star is, just to be clear, the Bronze Star I have is not a Bronze Star with a V device for valor or anything. I have an Air Medal with a V device for valor that I can talk about.
I'm gonna get to that one.
But the Bronze Star is so when you deployed to Afghanistan and you were in a leadership position and you did your job well for a year, a lot of times the award coming out of that would be a Bronze Star. And so I did my job. I got a Bronze Star. It is not a Bronze Star with V device that means I did something special or whatever for it. I just look at it as I did my job for a year, and that was the award that my commander gave me for it. And I'm not trying to be frivolous about it or anything. There are folks with Bronze Stars with V devices or things of that is a completely different animal than my award.
No, you're just being honest and forward about what it is. But your Air Medal does have a V device for valor, which is for heroism during aerial flight, correct?
Yeah. One of them does. I think I have 3 Air Medals total or something, because you get, the way it worked when I was in Afghanistan is another one. The commander comes up with criteria that says, in order to award somebody an Air Medal, it's this, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was usually so many combat missions over a period of time or something like that. The Air Medal with V device was different. That was for a specific day, and from my experience, normally if somebody has a V device or an award for valor, it's because something has gone very wrong, and you happened to be there when that thing went wrong. And so for me, that was on June 28th, 2005 with Alex, the guy I talked to you about before. We were on a QRF duty that morning, and it was another one where our radio went off and I ran to the helicopter, and Alex ran to the TOC, and he came back and he said, hey, there's a 4-man SEAL team that inserted the previous night. We've lost contact with them, and we think they might be in trouble. And so what we had was their call sign, their last known position, and kind of a radio frequency, and that was it. And so that was the operation. It was called Operation Red Wings. The story of that has been told in Marcus Luttrell's book Lone Survivor, and then the movie. I will say, I haven't watched the movie. I know how the movie ends. It's not super realistic compared to what actually happened, but from our perspective, we went from, and then my wingmen were 2 guys named Dan Bryce and Mark Rudy, and so we flew from Bagram to Jalalabad to link up with 2 Black Hawks full of Marines that were going to be the ground QRF. And we flew together, the 4 of us, to the top of this mountain in Afghanistan to try and find the SEALs. And as we were coming in, we linked up with 2 MH-47s. So it's the special operations, the 160th version of the Chinook helicopters that was full of SEALs. And they were also trying to rescue their brothers in arms. And so as we came into the landing zone, the MH-47 decided not to wait for me to clear the landing zone because we were, long story, we were the first longbow helicopters, longbow Apaches in Afghanistan. And so it was the next generation Apache helicopter. And it was an amazing helicopter, but it was several thousand pounds heavier than the original Apache, but it still had the original Apache's engines. And so during the summertime, if you were high, hot, and heavy, which we were, all 3 of those things, you were very, very power limited. So for instance, you didn't even have power to hover out of ground effect. And so as we were coming to the top of the mountain, the MH-47s kept pulling further and further ahead. And usually what happens when you're escorting helicopter is the helicopter you're escorting stays in front of you. So if they take fire, they can do evasive maneuvers and you can roll in and suppress that fire. And then when you get to what's called the release point, you change positions and the Apaches go in, clear the landing zone, and then call the helicopters in, and you serve as overwatch. So you're looking for bad guys. If there are bad guys, you suppress them. And then as the helicopters come in, if they're taking fire, you suppress them. And then once the SEALs or Green Berets or Rangers or whoever they are on the ground, you start working for them and providing fires for them. And so because we were so high, hot, and heavy, I couldn't keep up with the Chinook. And so rather than wait for me to clear the landing zone first, he decided to press on. And unfortunately, as he came to a hover, there were Taliban embedded all around that landing zone. And one of them popped up and hit him with an RPG. And he went into the side of the mountain, and everyone on board was killed. And so it was the most SEALs killed in the history of the SEALs were killed on that day until the extortion 1-7 shoot down that happened a number of years later. So I was on that operation. It's not a happy story. I don't have happy things to say. I don't feel like it was on my part that it was particularly heroic, but it's kind of how it goes. Like I said, most of the time when you get in a medal like that, it's because things have gone wrong and you happen to be there when they do go wrong.
Yeah, I appreciate you being willing to share that one. Yeah, it's an insane story because I mean everything is kind of beyond your control at that point, especially when somebody pops up with an RPG out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was a pretty terrible day.
What, if you don't mind me asking, when your military service ended and you became a special agent in the FBI, so you investigated federal crimes and your job was to protect national security, is that correct?
Yeah, something like that. So actually, when I got out of the Army, I went and did a job in corporate America for 3 years first. And so like a lot of veterans who transition out of service, especially folks who have served in combat, you don't realize how much of who you are and what you do is who you are, and your sense of worth is tied up in what you did. And so I went from flying Apache helicopters to sitting in a cubicle and building Excel spreadsheets. And so it was a really tough 3 years of trying to figure out who I was now, where did I find my sense of purpose, what mattered, what did it mean that I was alive and there were people who weren't, and how did I honor their memory, or how should I honor their memory? And so long story short, the FBI at the time was recruiting pretty heavily folks with military backgrounds. And so I put in an application for that and was selected. And when you're in Quantico, after you graduated, you are tracked one of 5 things, or at least you used to. I assume this is still true. And so you can either be were criminal, counterintelligence, intelligence, cyber, or counterterrorism, one of those 5 things. And so I was tracked counterintelligence, but when I got to Dallas, it's very much kind of like the Army. It's you have a plan and the Army has a plan, and the Army's plan always wins over your plan. It's called needs of the Army. It's the phrase that strikes terror into every soldier, because it means no matter what you want, no matter what you were told, no matter what you were, the needs of the Army at that moment in time trumps all of that. And so for me at that in the Dallas field office, what they needed and what they signed me to was what's called the human intelligence squad. And so my job was to go out and run and recruit what we in the FBI call sources, and what folks who do a similar job in the CIA call assets. And so there are national questions that your job is to go find people who know the answers to those questions and persuade them to share that information with you. And so it was a really, really fun job. I had a great time doing it. And most large field offices like Dallas also have their own SWAT team, their own FBI SWAT team. And so for all but the biggest offices like New York or Chicago, or I think Washington field office, it's an additional duty. Those other big offices, I think they're full-time. You can be a full-time SWAT person. But in mine, it was an additional duty. And so after I'd been there for a while, I tried out for the SWAT team and made it. And so you do your day job, which for me, like I said at the time, was to run and recruit sources. And then one day a week, you do SWAT operations. You either have a hit that you're going to do, or you have SWAT training, or you go into the range or something like that. And so it was a pretty fun gig. And then just when I was enjoying it the most, the ASAC, or the Assistant Special Agent in Charge, called me into his office and he said, Bentley, the squad you're on is supposed to be for more senior agents. You're a junior agent. You haven't done investigative work yet. We need to move you to an investigative squad. And so, being the naive person I was, I thought, oh, that's great. Well, I'm tracked counterintelligence, so I'm going to go to the counterintelligence squad. And I should have known from my time in the Army that in fact would not be the case. And he looked at me and he said, nope, you're going to the public corruption squad. And so I went from meeting people in back alleys and talking about crazy stuff to sitting in a cubicle again and reviewing Excel spreadsheets. And so my FBI career did not last much longer than that, but it was still a pretty good gig for the period of time I got to do the fun job.
Man, without all that stuff, I hope you got something to fall back on, like writing or something like that,
I don't know. I'm hoping.
Being a former FBI guy, are you a pain in the ass to keep secrets from? Like, in your family, can they even like surprise you with a birthday party or something like that?
I don't know if it's that part I'm great at, but if you run and recruit sources or assets, they teach you to do something that's called elicitation. And it means that you get people to tell you things they wouldn't normally tell you things without realizing they're telling you those things. So I'm pretty good at that.
See, I need to hang out with you because there was a lamp broken in my house in 1989 and I still get blamed for it. And I don't know who did it for real. So how did you end up on the Dallas SWAT team?
Yeah, like I said, so it's an additional duty in Dallas, and the team has, I can't remember at the time, somewhere between 20 and 30 folks. And so people rotate on and off the team. And so if the person on the team decides, it really is a young man's job because it's hard on your body and all the things you can imagine. And so as people get older, they rotate off the team, or maybe they get transferred or something like that. And so every so often there are vacancies on the team. And so the one person, again, when I was there, maybe it's changed. There's only one person who does that job full time. It's the senior team leader. It's the person, the special agent in charge of all the rest of them. And so he or she will decide, hey, it's time to hold tryouts. We have four operator slots open on the team. And so they'll put out a notice to the entire office, hey, we're going to do tryouts. Here are the qualifications. And if you want to try out, put your packet in and be there at this time. And so again, the nature of the tryout varies from team leader to team leader. For me, it was a day-long event that was a combination of physical stuff, of proficiency with your weapon and stuff, but the majority of it was actually thinking stuff. It's like how they have a number of different scenarios or situations where they're role players and they want to see, there's kind of the baseline physical, can you shoot? Are you in shape? Can you do these things? But what they really want to know is how are you going to handle yourself under stress, and so there are a number of role players and nasty situations that they put you through in between the smoke sessions and everything to wear you down physically and mentally to see how you're going to do. And there are like cuts throughout the day where if somebody doesn't pass the physical test, if they don't shoot, if they don't whatever, if they quit, and then they take at the end of the tryouts, like I said, for me, it was just a day long. They have the people that have made the cut, and then the senior team leader and the other 2 element team leaders and the team itself go do some black magic, and they come up with kind of the order of merit list and decide like who makes the cut and who doesn't. And so it was really, really fun. I knew it was coming up. I had people encourage me to try out, and but it's still, when I came home, and again, it's nothing like the hostage rescue team tryout, HRT or something. That one is I have had 2 friends of mine go through it. Neither of them made it. One was a Force Recon Marine, and he still didn't make the HRT cut. That one like destroys your body, and it very much mirrors more of like a special forces selection or something like that. This one was just a hard day, but I remember coming home and I had, my pants were ripped up. I was bleeding out of my knees because I'd gotten scuffed up. I actually had boot prints all across my white t-shirt because there was an event where you had to do some shenanigans to get over something. And I was the low man. And my wife took one look at me and she's like, "What happened to you?" And I was like, "It's all good. It's all good." And then what was funny is the next morning, all of us that had tried out, you have to show up in your suit and do an interview with the senior team leader. And there was some kind of office-wide training that day. Like somebody was coming in to present PowerPoint slides. And so all of us who had tried out are sitting there in our suits in these stiff little chairs back to back, passing the aspirin bottle between us as our legs are cramping up. And we're trying to just, again, nothing like special forces selection, nothing. It's just a hard day, but it was kind of funny.
What's a guy like you even do to relax?
That's a good question. I think because of the different jobs that I've had and just the mentality, I guess, of me or people that do those jobs, is I still put a pretty high premium on physical fitness. And so I work out quite a bit. I still do. I'm the old man in our in the mixed martial arts gym I go to. I still like doing physicality. I get beat up a lot, usually by young kids. But my wife always says that Toby Keith's song applies to me. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good as I was once, or whatever it is. I'm like, I got that old man strength. I can grab those 25-year-old kids once. It's just the second time I can't get to them. So I still do that. I try and work out or do something physical every day. I still love to read. I like to work. I like to write. I got 3 kids. They're all gone now, though. We dropped our youngest one off at college, so we're empty nesters now. But I got a crazy dog, so that kind of makes up for it.
You can see in the background of Kip's and occasionally mine, we have a crazy dog as well. Basically what I was going to ask you was, where can everybody find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on X, on Facebook, and on Instagram, all with the same handle, and it's just at Bentley Don B. So BENTLEY Don B. Or if you're a website guy, like I said, it's donbentley.books.com.
Right on. And again, this will be coming out, Denied Access.
Yeah.
I'll unblur that, I promise. Denied Access on September 30th, 2025, which is one day before this airs. Kip, go ahead and wrap it up, bud.
All right. So the way we wrap these up, usually we have a short questionnaire. It's the one that was perfected or was created by Bernard Pivot, perfected by James Lipton. So just short answers if you want to. If you want to explain them, feel free. What is your favorite word?
Courage. It's something I aspire to. I watched one of my favorite movies. In fact, the reason why my son is named Will is William Wallace. And so just that, like I said, I've been surrounded by people who that word applies to, and I've gotten to see it firsthand, and it's something I aspire to.
What is your least favorite word?
Quit. So many things in life are amazing, but they're hard. And you have to, I talked Mark Graney, again, going back to one of my big brothers in this job. And he said, whenever he gets to the point with writing, with whatever, where he wants to quit, he said, if I want to quit now, the majority of people who are doing this want to quit now. And so if I write just one more page, I can be the guy who's pushed past where I wanted to quit. And my stuff I'm not a natural pilot. Like I failed my pilot and command ride the first time. I had to get extra time. I failed my driver's license test the first time. But I think what that taught me was it isn't the most talented person that succeeds. A lot of times it's the person that just refuses to quit.
Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
When my girls are together and they're back, and the sisters are best friends, and when they're home from college together, and I can just hear them laughing, and I don't even know what they're talking about, but I just love hearing the two of them laugh.
What sound or noise do you hate?
I, like many veterans, am blessed with tinnitus, and so that little ringing in your ear that comes at odd times and makes you want to claw your eyeballs out, I'm not a super fan of.
My dad has the same problem. It's horrible. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
So I told my wife my next job is I'm going to be a tomato farmer, because I have tried that multiple times with varying amounts of success, mainly because our neighborhood is infested with squirrels, but I'm going to beat them back one day.
What profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
I am the worst. I worked a construction job all through college because the guy was kind enough not to fire me. And by construction job, I mean I pushed a broom around and cleaned things up because that's all I was qualified to do. So when it comes to building stuff in our house, especially the things that IKEA puts out, it's my wife who does that.
Creatively, what turns you on?
I just like I like great stories and great storytelling. One of the fantastic show I've seen lately that just came out or just finished was Landman, and just the story, like it's Billy Bob is in the role of his life. The writing is fantastic. It's just one of those where you want to push pause just because you want the episode to last longer. And when you can find a good book that same way, where you purposely close it up and put it down because you want it to last a little longer, I think I've done my job as a writing. And so I love it when I can find TV shows or books like that.
Creatively, what turns you off?
When writers haven't done the work and what you're reading is something that's old or cobbled together, or you just quit. You didn't try real hard here. The TV show is a recycled one you've seen 1,000 times before. That's what turns me off.
What is your favorite curse word?
Man, I don't know that I have a favorite one. I don't know. Whatever's appropriate for the moment. Actually, I try not to curse very often. My writing has it because the folks who are characters like mine, that's how they talk. But I try and not do that.
Totally respectable. Last question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Yeah, so I'm a believer. I do think heaven exists, and I hope that he says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And so I think that what I try and do is when I look back in my life, I can see God's fingerprints. I can see where he showed up, and I try and tell other people about the amazing things that God has done in my life and be faithful to that.
Well, Don Bentley, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's been amazing. Again, denied access September 30th. Is that what you said?
29th.
Yes.
29th. Sorry, my mistake.
It might be 30th. I don't know. I'm just busting.
It says 9/30/25 there.
There you
I
go.
swear
There
this isn't an Air Force Army mess up this time. I promise.
Yeah, it is
All
the
right.
30th. You're right.
Well, thank you for your time. It's been